Hi folks, welcome to the Prepared Homestead. This is Travis. Thank you all for stopping by to watch. Thought I better get outside and get my outdoor video done this morning because according to the weatherman, we're going to have over 40-mile-an-hour winds this afternoon. And if that happens, probably not going to be doing any outdoor videos. Even with a microphone, it would make it hard to hear. Lots of wind noises, and I know that no one really likes the wind noises, so I do my best to avoid them. Want to talk to you folks about something that's near and dear to my heart. I bring it up every once in a while and have been thinking about it again. And I think we should just have another talk about it because I believe it's very important. It's very important in the times that we live in. We've talked about recently that there's one of the biggest wars that's going on today is this war on the family. You know, there's this absolute overt attack on the family. This has been going on for a long time, at least the last 2 or 3 decades. And not only is there a war on the family, there's a war on each part of the family, each person in the family. There's been a war on women and womanhood, godly womanhood. There's a war now on children, trying to pervert and discourage and confuse children today. There's also been a war on men and a war on manhood, and that's been going on for a long time. And I want to talk about that today because there's so much confusion out there of what a real man is. And I'm not here to tell you that I have all the answers and that I am the epitome of that because, you know, it's a continual learning experience and spiritual and physical and mental growth on a daily basis to trying to get to that point of what Yeshua, I believe, showed us to be a real man. But I was thinking about this the other day, about how many, and maybe I'm the only one that's noticed this, but how many books are there out there that you've seen over the last maybe a couple of years or so of, you know, how to be a man, you know, masculine warriors and you know, tough guy this, and how to be a man this way. And I see them all the time. I've seen them on advertisements online and stuff like that. And I'm not saying that they're all bad or anything. I'm not making fun of the books at all. In fact, I've had a couple of them sent to me. A couple of, you know, some listeners have sent them to me. And I've looked through them, and there's some good stuff in them. Some of them, you know, talk about, you know, godly manhood, and they're not wrong, okay? So I'm not making fun of the books. I'm just pointing out that there's a lot of them out there. And maybe there's a lot of them out there because there's this great need for manhood, for manliness. And the problem is when there's this great need for something, there's always the charlatans that have to step up and try to capitalize on that. And I think that's where we need to be cautious of. You know, I'm a father of boys, of men and boys, 2 that are adults and 2 that are children. And so for me, being an example of what it means to be a godly man is very important, and to raise them up in the best way that I can. It's extremely important because of the world that we live in. It's so much more important now, more now than ever, because I believe that the world is so much worse than it's ever been. And it's going to be so much more important to have a strong foundation of beliefs and of understanding of what you are, because there's such a great attack on that. And it's the same with women too, but for today's focus, it's men. I also remember, I don't know, a year or 2 ago, I can't remember when, but I saw an advertisement for a seminar. It may have been out in Las Vegas or something like that. And it actually got me to chuckle at first and then realize how it just showed how there's a problem in the world. And this advertisement was something about being a successful man, or, you know, strong, you know, warrior man, being lions, and, you know, all these little catchphrases that they use. And on the advertisement, it had pictures of all the speakers at this seminar, this event that lasted a few days, and every one of them. And I'm not criticizing them. I'm not trying to demean them, but they almost were cartoonish. Every one of them they were either these massively huge, bulging muscles, you know, weightlifting, powerlifting type of guys, or they were all almost looked like used car salesmen, you know, slick back hair, high dollar suits on, fancy, expensive, you know, diamond encrusted glasses, you know, or sitting there with a big cigar and a glass of, you know, expensive whiskey. And every picture was like that. They all, you know, are standing there with their $500,000 car or $1 million car. They were, you know, walking out of their you know, private, you know, G whatever jet plane. And it's the idea that I think that they were trying to, you know, spread was that, you know, listen to these financially successful men, these men that's got these beautiful model, you know, women on them, these men that are, you know, physically just monsters, and they're so disciplined to make their bodies so huge and perfectly physique that you need to listen to them because that's what it means to be a real man. That's kind of the message that we hear a lot today. And in fact, I've said this before, in this world, it's almost like that there's only two acceptable ways to be a man. And that is to be this overly feminized man, this man that actually thinks they're a woman, or they're just extremely feminized as a man, or this man that is, you know, knuckle dragging caricature of a man that is, you know, so overly brutish that he's absolutely rude and disgusting. It's almost like the world is okay with those two types of men, but anything that's in between, anything that actually espouses what, you know, a godly man should probably look like is not okay. And that should make you think. That should make you pause and think. Because, I mean, if that's the case, then maybe the one that's not okay in society is where we should probably be. A man should definitely be tough. I mean, you don't have to necessarily be physically tough. I've known men that their physical bodies at least present themselves as not being terribly tough. They're small build, seem to be kind of frail or thin. They don't fit the bill of the, you know, strong, tough guy, but yet they are. So I'm not necessarily saying that you have to have a certain physique about you. In fact, my opinion is your physique is the least importance of what it means to be a man. There's constantly stuff online, and I get a lot of it just because of this channel, I believe, of all these new people out there trying to make money. They're trying to establish themselves a career, and some of them have. Some of them are multi-millionaires. Some of them you see in the news often, or on social media news, where, you know, they're worth millions of dollars, and they drive around in their high-end cars, and just like I was explaining, you know, smoking really expensive cigars, drinking fancy bourbon, and they're talking about what it means to be a man, and that what masculinity is, and that, you know, you need to be like them, and you need to have this perfect body and have these $1 million cars. If you're not financially successful, if you can't take your woman out and buy her, you know, fancy diamonds and furs and all this other stuff, then you're not a real man. If you don't look like them, if you don't treat a woman the way they do, which is usually not very good, then you're not a real man. We need to be cautious of this kind of stuff. We need to be cautious of the people that we follow, because a lot of times, in fact, I'm not going to mention the name, but they're very popular around the world. They have a huge online presence. I only recently discovered who they are through some other people. They had mentioned them. I'm like, who is that? And they're like, oh man, this guy's super popular. Lots of videos, he's on TV and all this kind of stuff. So I kind of looked him up recently, really in the last couple of weeks. And while probably anywhere between 40 and 50% of the things that I've heard him say, I agree with. I think he's right. The other stuff, and certainly how he presents himself, I think is actually, to use a liberal word, toxic. And I think it's toxic to what real manhood is. For those of you that are men, or for those of you that are raising young men or young boys to become men, we have to be cautious of this. And I think that it shows really how bad things are in the world. That there's such a vacuum of good men to look up to, of good examples, of real leadership, that we take these caricatures or these men that they're not men. They're almost in costume. In fact, in my opinion, they're almost in costume in the same way as these other males that dress up like women are in costume. They're trying to sell you this character, okay? And that's all they are. They're just a character. And I think that we're seeing this become more and more prevalent because, like I said, there's more and more of a need for it. There's a great need right now in this world for strong men. Again, I'm not talking just physically strong. I'm talking about mentally and spiritually strong men. There's actually a listener that been communicating with, and he's been ill, having some medical problems. Severe, really severe life-threatening medical problems, and been on the verge of life and death a few times recently. And he's kind of gotten discouraged, kind of gotten down about it, that even if he does survive this, he may not be able to do any of the things that he's ever wanted to do. He may not survive this. And I know this man to be a really godly man, a good person and a godly man. And I was telling him, I said, you still have a purpose, regardless of how you end up physically from this. You still have a purpose, because maybe one of your purposes is to be an example for the young men around you. And he's an older man, because there's such a vacuum of good examples of what a godly man is. I said, and if nothing else, even if you're bound to a wheelchair for the rest of your life and you physically can't do the things that you dreamed of, and living off the land or whatever it is because of this, you can still give back to the community and give back to those around you, because you can show them what a real man is like, what a godly man is like, because there's a great need for that. As we connect with others and build communities, build relationships, that's something that we need to do. We need to teach these young men, these boys around us, what a real man is, what it means to be a truly masculine man, because there's such a perversion of that today. And I'm not talking about a perversion, again, just because of all this men dressing like women stuff. I'm talking about a perversion within our own circles, of people trying to portray this character of what a man is. Being loud and boisterous, or being rude and crude, or trying to convince you that a man can be, that a man needs to be these things. A man needs to be, overly aggressive or overly crude and rude or overly loud or whatever it is, because that's what a man is. I mentioned just a few minutes ago in this video, Jesus, Yeshua. And I always try to look to him, and then of course many others in the Bible. And that's how I teach my boys. In fact, just recently, the teenage boy living at home, he's 14. I was telling him, I said, son, you want to know what it means to be a man? I said, you don't even have to look to me. I said, in a lot of ways, I said, I'm very imperfect in a lot of ways, not the best example of what it is to be a man. I said, I try, but I'm not always the best example. I said, if you want the best example of what it means and to be a man and how to be a man, I said, you need to open the Bible. You need to start reading about Yeshua, Jesus. I said, because I believe that he was probably the best example that this planet has ever seen on what it means to be a man. He was kind, he was gentle, he was loving, he was very secure with himself. He was also very firm, had confidence. He wasn't afraid to become aggressive when the time was needed, but he used very much a strong restraint, even in times that many of us might not use that restraint. He was very wise in knowing when to restrain himself and when to not. He had the capability of doing a lot of things that could have overpowered people, and yet he chose not to, because he knew it was for a higher purpose. There's also other people in the Bible I teach my children. One of my favorite Bible characters is Joshua. I believe that he is espoused such a great example of a warrior, a true warrior. And there are many others in the Bible. And so I try to teach my children, especially the boys, that this is how we should try to live our lives and pattern our lives. Don't look to these worldly examples. And some of these worldly examples come at you with the Bible and and they sound very much like what a godly person is. But if you kind of examine them, you kind of figure out that there's certain things that's not quite there. And really that's true with all of us, because we're all imperfect. We need to get our homes in order, okay? I say this almost every day, to get your houses in order, and it's true, because there's so much more going on than inflation, than wars, than pandemics. There's so much more than all of that that's happening. There is a true war, a true battle going on for families and for your children, for their hearts and minds. And we need to be raising them up. And I tell in our community, our monthly meetings, our little community there's men, good older men and stuff that come. Some of them are single. Some of them don't have kids or grandkids. And we tell them, you need to be an example to the kids that are here, because there's a lot of kids that come, and there's actually some young men in their 20s, teens and 20s that are part of our community. And I tell the older men, you are an example for them. So remember, while you're here, while we're doing things, you guys need to be an example to them. Show them. I tell my sons, look around you at our meetings in our community. These men around you, they're examples of what it means to be a real man. You're not going to find that out in the world too much nowadays. But you men, it's time for us to step up and be an example. That is your purpose. If nothing else, your purpose is to show the generations behind you that, or in front of you, I guess, that what it really is like to be a man, and how to portray yourselves and behave and to treat others. Because the world around us, all it is perversion. It's showing a perverted image of what manhood is. And I'm telling you, I think that this is one of the biggest things that's happening, that's causing this world to go down the hole that it is. Because if this world was filled with truly, really righteous, masculine, manly men, I don't think we would be in the problems and have the problems that we have going on right now. So when I say get your houses in order, part of that is raising your children in the best way possible. And to find the best advice on that is just get on your knees in prayer, because the Father in heaven's going to give you the best advice on how to raise your children. Get your houses in order. Prepare mentally, physically, and spiritually. Thank you for watching. I'll catch you in the next video.